Well, Anthony, great to have you here in Washington, D.C. I want everyone to know this is our first time actually on the same set.
Yeah.
We've done shows kind of virtually somewhat together, never together physically. I'm a little nervous.
First of all, it's great to be here. It's great to be in D.C. except for the cold, but it's nice to be in the studio with you and like connect like this. So this is fantastic.
Well, you know, these are very tough times right now in California. We're going to talk about California today. Obviously, the wildfires has been something that has created such great tragedy and uncertainty. You now have a situation where 12,000 structures have been taken out. There are 8,600 firefighters from around the world that have been a part of this effort to tame the fire right now as we speak. It looks like the Palisades and Eaton fires are somewhat contained, but they're talking about winds coming back into play in a week. How are people feeling out there? Are we still in the stage of shock?
I think so. I mean, look, things are happening so fast. And the first thing you start thinking about is, who do I know? Where are they? Are they safe? You mentioned the numbers in terms of the number of structures and acreage, but we had at one point, I think, close to 200,000 people under evacuation orders in LA County.
Yeah.
It's a big county. I mean, it's 10 million people in LA County. And you mentioned the two fires, but there were several other hotspots around the area, including the Hollywood Hills, where, our office in Hollywood is not too far. And as you know, California is no stranger to natural disasters.
Nope.
We have our fair share of natural disasters in LA County. We have fires every year, and we have had, earthquakes and all the other things impacting a lot of people. It's, a major media market, very much front and center worldwide. So for it to be happening there at that scale and that quickly, and how fast those fires move with those winds, it was really, really tough situation. So we are not out of the woods, but have had a little bit of a lull in the storm. We're hoping that it doesn't come back.
You think of the visuals, right?
Yeah.
That people are seeing. And I'm struck by that one you've seen already of David Steiner's home in Malibu, which seems untouched as everything on either side of it is completely decimated. And they talked about he had fire-resistant roofs and concrete structure, kind of state-of-the-art design, right?
You can do all the hardening you want, but sometimes it's just the luck of the draw, sadly. But even in those cases, another good friend of mine who's been evacuated since the fires broke out hasn't been able to get back to his house. He doesn't know when he's going to be able to get back. He did sort of sneak. I won't say who he is because he sort of snuck back in to just kind of get a look of things. The smoke damage, even on the houses that are remaining, could also create somewhat of a total loss in some of these situations. So it's a hard thing, and people as individuals are trying to come to grips with it, cope, recover. But then there's the response. There's the political response and the system response to be able to get people back into their homes and start the rebuilding and how to think about that. Obviously, I don't have to repeat the news, but there's a lot of criticism about what happened. But I do know that, everybody's sort of singularly focused on that right now.
So you've worked a lot with Governor Newsom. Obviously, he's right in the middle of this situation. He is trying, it seems, to send a message. We are on top of this as much as we can, and we're doing it as fast as we can. And the word fast, very much a part of his vocabulary now, because, as you know, in a crisis, the toughest part in a way of a crisis is what happens after the danger itself has passed.
Right.
And you're into that word called recovery. And when recovery doesn't happen immediately, which it never happens that way. Maybe in movies, that's where really the rubber meets the road. That's probably what the governor must be and should be focused on right now is the manner and speed of that response.
No, 100%. Because as you know, there are two disasters. There's the event itself, and then there's the aftermath. And we learned that painfully with Hurricane Katrina, for example.
Sure.
Right? But yes, having said all that, of course, the governor's already thinking about that. I've spent some time talking with him and his team over the last week, primarily, just what the needs are, what we need to do to respond. I may be biased, but I do think he has a great handle on it. He's down in LA. He's pretty much camped out down there right now.
Yeah, he seems to be very much boots on the ground right now.
Got the right people around him, calling the shots and acting, right? I mean, the executive orders that have been just about on a daily basis on things that people actually need and care about, and are not just looking at the immediate, and certainly there's a lot of the immediate, but also looking ahead and looking at, the next couple of years, in fact.
And obviously, it's also going to take a lot of partnership to make that happen. The federal government is going to have to be a major part of this recovery process. It's important to see how the governor and the president and others can work together with common purpose to kind of bring things home, it definitely has impact. I think about the governor's race in 26. Clearly, the public's ultimate judgment on how the major players did or didn't do going to have a lot of bearing, I think, on the politics of that particular election.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, look, I think if you ask any one of those players in this, they'd all say, we'll leave the politics for later, right? Except that everything that we do is political, right? But at the same time, look, I know that they're focused on getting the job done, whether that's the Biden administration or the incoming Trump administration. They're aware. They know that they're going to inherit this crisis. But I know that the president-elect and his team, they're about America. They're about Americans. At the end of the day, these are Americans whose lives are at stake. You know, regardless of the politics and whether they agree or disagree on issues, I think Gavin Newsom is going to have an open hand when the president comes. And when the president steps up and delivers something, I think he'll say the president stepped up and delivered this.
So what's happening with the Hollywood production industry? I mean, selfishly, all of us outside of California want Netflix and Hulu and the others to continue to stream great stuff, right? So how much of an impact do you think that's going to have ultimately, given what's going on?
Fortunately, I don't think much of the infrastructure of the industry was impacted directly, right? It's obviously people's individual lives, and a lot of people who are in the industry are impacted. Fortunately, I think for the short term, our shows are still going to flow because a lot of that stuff is already in the can and it's already done and it'll get to us. But I do think there is a resiliency about LA and California, again, to my bias, where we'll bounce back from it and we'll have a bigger, better, stronger industry as a result of it.
Well, you know, the country has a lot at stake in California. I think selfishly of the World Cup that's coming there in part, the Olympics in 28. You know, it's a very funny thing about natural disasters. And living in Florida, I'm very familiar with what that feels like. And some of it is like the roulette wheel. Like often you get very lucky. And in Florida, living in Tampa Bay, for the most part, we've been very lucky that the big one didn't hit in just the wrong place, but we know our number could come up at some point. I hope, you know, when we get together again, the fires are fully contained, that, you know, LA and the state of California is on its way to recovery, and that it becomes an example of something where in the worst of things happen in this nation, the best instincts end up coming out.
Yeah, I think so. I have every faith that's going to be the case.
And of course, we have to preserve our Los Angeles studio.
That's right.
Because without that, we're kind of half out of business. So
yes, exactly.
You have a rooting interest in this as well, right?
That's it. Good stuff.
Hey,
all right. Good to see you, Adam.